Today, cut a switch off that tree. We got some tariffs to wail on. This is CheckPoint. Welcome to CheckPoint, where we're playing 20 questions.
No, we're reading the news.
We never get to do what I want. By now, I hope we're all at least passingly familiar with the infamous Big Rigs Over-the-Road Racing, which originally released in 2003 for Windows, and showcased such features as a lack of collision detection on buildings and bridges, and an unbound top speed when reversing, meaning this baby can go from 0 to my god it's full of stars in about 5 seconds. The justifiably maligned meme game has just reappeared for purchase on Steam, and it's even worse somehow. Wading past the very funny and hilarious positive reviews about how this is a pinnacle of gaming, all others cower in its shadow, you eventually find a bunch of on-topic comments asking why it runs so badly on modern machines, why it's using so many processor cycles, and why it needs a secondary app just to track Steam achievements. Nobody's saying it's like a Bitcoin miner or anything, but it's weird. Also, it costs $5, which is about $5 too much. It's available on archive.org, for goodness sake, which is maybe how this release became possible, because it's published by Marguerite Entertainment, a company with no online presence outside of this Steam release and their own minimal website. I tried doing a web search omitting the word rigs and just got a bunch of results for Margaritaville, which would be more fun. The original release was published by The Game Mill, who still exist and have been putting up bangers like Skull Island: Rise of Kong. Maybe bangers was the wrong word. It's in keeping with their oeuvre, I suppose. In any case, I feel utterly neutral to tell you this is probably not as dramatic as all that. The official Marguerite Entertainment website bears an enormous banner asking, "Are you the rightful owner of a well-known old game?" implying that this is just sort of what they do. Of course, the only game listed anywhere on their site is Big Rigs, and that's deeply sad. Also, apparently the CPU issue is that the game is using Unreal 5 as a launcher and was running at an uncapped frame rate of 500 FPS, which is something they've now patched by limiting it to 30 in the Unreal Launch Wizard. Great to see continuity in the level of care.
A Minecraft movie opened this weekend, forcing millions of fans to choose between missing out and only looking at one screen for 2 hours. The movie itself was kind of shit as far as movies go, not a ton of plot, didn't leave you asking any questions, and didn't really take any risks. Jack Black sang, but not for long enough that you would care, and Jason Momoa delivered a washed-up pro-gamer facing eviction and car trouble. Danielle Brooks was endearingly sincere, Jennifer Coolidge basically was Stifler's mom again, and we were here for it. And that's the thing. This film might not be a good movie, but it was the movie the Minecraft audience wanted. The movie's vernacular was up to date, they introduced most of the core elements of Minecraft, all the mobs had faithful but comedic portrayals, and they did a lot of Minecraft stuff like flying around, holding a lit firework, and cooking a chicken in lava. I am Steve, chicken jockey, flint and steel. It had satisfactory memes per second. And in fact, the kids absolutely loved the movie, and it made more money on opening weekend than any other video game movie in history, including Super Mario Bros. Audiences displayed their excitement in all kinds of ways during opening weekend, drawing comparisons to Rocky Horror Picture Show with popcorn flying every which way and people screaming and running around. Of course, some crowds got a little bit more out of control than others and had their screenings paused while the commotion was broken up by the police. But that means next year, if we're lucky, we'll get to hear about a lawyer using the in Minecraft defense. I would also take Tenacious D featuring Jason Momoa.
They've made another Switch. It's boldly named Switch 2, and it's very closely modeled on the first Switch, which is basically the precise thing everyone wanted, but don't worry, there are still so many reasons for everyone to get angry. Before we get to any of it, I want to reassure you and allay your worries, yes, the cartridges will still taste like vinegared ass. Everyone's favorite bitterant, denatonium benzoate, is back, baby! Switch 2 game cartridges are the same size, shape, and taste as Switch cartridges, only red now, because Switch games will be compatible with Switch 2 both digitally and physically. Now, Nintendo was very careful in its wording to not say that all Switch titles will be backwards compatible on Switch 2, leading to much eye-rolling and assumptions that it'll be like 3 Mario titles and Balloon Fight, sort of how Microsoft always makes sure that Halo 2 works before giving up on the idea. But no, you can go to the official Nintendo website and see a complete list of what does and doesn't work. The games that don't work are barely 1% of all Switch titles, and Nintendo is actively working with those publishers to troubleshoot issues. Also, every first-party Nintendo title will work, except Labo, and that's only because the Switch 2 is physically too large to fit into the VR headset controller. But the headset was made out of cardboard, and I thought the whole point was creativity, so that seems like quitter talk. But the Switch 2 is larger. The screen is 7.9 inches diagonally and can support up to 120 frames per second if the game allows it. The joysticks have been, quote, designed from the ground up, which I think is just how you design things, but we assume this means they've addressed the drift issues. The Joy-Cons connect via magnets. You can use them as a mouse, but you won't. The new dock has a fan and can do 4K, and there's a button just for chatting that you also won't use. But the console does have a microphone they claim will sound good even if you're sitting across the room. And as someone who makes a living talking into microphones, I doubt that very much. I also doubt Nintendo expected quite so much backlash on the price, because the Switch 2 is landing at $450 or 4,970 in the much more stable currency of Norwegian kroner. Of course, it's actually being sold there for 6,695 kroner because Norwegians just can't catch a break. The OG Switch was $300 at launch, and with everything that's happened between then and now, combined with the improved technology, $450 doesn't seem that ridiculous. If wages had kept pace with inflation, it probably wouldn't even be a problem. That said, charging $5 for their little interactive Switch 2 welcome tour is a tough pill to swallow, considering it's the sort of thing that should absolutely just be free software that comes with the console, and also that they're actually selling it for $10. The $450 price, according to Nintendo, has nothing to do with the hilarious on-again, off-again relationship that Bungles the Clown has with tariffs. The price is the one Nintendo chose. You can't blame the one-sided trade war. But you can blame that trade war and its tariffs, and especially the aforementioned clown, for Nintendo canceling US pre-orders. This is funny because it might be what finally radicalizes gamers against oligarchs playing tinker toys with the economy, but it'd be a lot funnier if Canadian shipment infrastructure didn't go through the US because they canceled our pre-orders too. Undeterred, a handful of content creators are already waiting in line for a device that doesn't come out until June. And before you ask how they can take 2 months off work, well, when you simply record everything you do and release it for people to watch, that is the job. This is actually a boom for Switch enthusiasts. That's why we sent Beej and Heather to Japan to take these exclusive photos at the Nintendo Museum. Beej says it's quite large in person, and as a big hand haver, I'm here for it. I am also in line, by the way. I'm in line. Right now, I'm just really far back.
And now, a story involving postmodernism, so we're going to have Cameron read it.
Thanks, Kathleen. Last week, Microsoft demonstrated that its World in Human Action Mass Git model, or WHAM, can simulate something that looks kind of like Quake 2. This is not Quake 2. I cannot emphasize enough that this is not Quake 2. This is a tenuously related series of images that looks like Quake 2 because it was trained on Quake 2. It is a simulation of what your cat sees when you play Quake 2. The model can generate multiple images in parallel and is able to run at 10 frames per second, the result being some consistency in what appears on screen. It also means that anything that leaves your field of view for 9/10 of a second ceases to exist. If you look down for 1 second and then look back up, the room could be completely different. It's very human to say the game world changes when you aren't looking at it because that is a description of what you see. But it's not true. The game world doesn't exist. It's an image being generated from probabilities. It's so cool when language betrays you. If you experience darkness, like you might if you were playing Quake 2 and were walking through a dark tunnel, you will continue to experience said darkness for an apparently random amount of time, no matter what you do or how you move. There is no tunnel. There is only the experience of being lost in the dark, which I find stressful. This is when I realized what they've actually made is a surprisingly useful demonstration of postmodernism. Hit M, kids, because this is the map to Quake 2's territory. Took me months, but I finally worked in a Borges reference. I wish it was under better circumstances. The model doesn't know what monsters are or why they die, because the pixels representing the monsters, who all look like Ditto imitating a Strog, are not a game entity with attributes like health. They cannot have a logical relationship with the pixels representing our weapon. At most, they seem to have a probabilistic one. The pixels that look like monsters have a tendency to turn into pixels that look like dead monsters when they're near the center of the screen, but because monsters in Quake 2 can die from things other than the player shooting at them, in the demo they turn into dead shapes at random. Like everything else in the demo, they can also just disappear. That brings up a further point, which is that in Quake 2, things can affect the game that do not appear on screen. In Quake 2, you can, for example, be shot from behind by a monster, which will decrement your health, or strafe over a pickup, which will increment your ammunition. Those are logically consistent events in the game, but would not have appeared as such in the demo's training data. Those pixels changed, but nothing happened on screen. So what it seems to have incorporated into its model is that the pixels we interpret as representing our health and ammunition can change at random. You walk along, things happen for no reason, your resources fluctuate, people and objects vanish and appear unpredictably, and it's generally unpleasant. Frankly, same. It's T.S. Eliot's heap of broken images in fake video game form. When they described Strogos as a desert wasteland, I didn't know they meant the wasteland. No wonder we had to blow it up. They attacked our epistemology. Never forget. Until you do. Look. There's a lot to hate here, and while I personally find the philosophical issues to be the most urgent and offensive, others have argued convincingly that the labor, environmental, artistic, or design issues are more pressing. I love being in a coalition. It's good to see a vigorous defense of those things. It's miserable to need one.
Wait, what are you still doing here? Where's Graham?
You looked away and it changed.
Got by epistemology again. Coming up, Roblox is suing Player Auctions, accusing the third-party marketplace of disrupting its economy and scamming and exploiting its users in violation of their terms of service, which clearly states that only Roblox is allowed to scam and exploit their users. All right, well, that was CheckPoint this week. As a reminder, if you like what we do here, you can leave a comment below. And if you support us on YouTube, you'll see your name appearing at some point in this sort of outro sequence, to be determined, by Graham, who's doing this while Heather's away on vacation. Because she legitimately is in Japan.
Yeah, they look like they're having a great time.
Yeah, taking pictures of Switch 2, answering work emails.
Yeah, posting on the work Slack.
Yeah, occasionally.
Largely, actually, the same hours.
Yeah, it turns out maybe Beige was just built for Japan.
Maybe.
The jet lag doesn't exist. He was already on a weird schedule. He was just on Japanese time.
The whole time. Wow. I'm glad he's found his environment.
He's going to be really pissed off when he has to come back.
Oh.
Well, we'll worry about that in like a couple of weeks, though. Until then, thank you so much for everybody who's watching. You can throw us a couple bucks on our Patreon if you are so desiring of supporting this independent video games journalism coverage / philosophy discourse.
Yeah.
And talk to you later, everybody. Bye-bye.